the business of Shaquille O'Neal. And so I just recently interviewed him, and I actually asked him about Caitlin Clark, and he had an interesting take on it, which he said the tension in the league right now is not racially motivated tension, it's not political tension, it's a rite of passage that she is going to be the face of the league, but the existing veteran players are not going to let her until she basically goes through this on-the-court hazing ritual. And
what transpired after the whistle blew is more shocking than the fact that this game got heated. One violent collision involving DiJonai Carrington and Sophie Cunningham abruptly transformed the WNBA into a courtroom. Shaq O'Neal offered his opinion, and Caitlin Clark found herself in the middle of the storm for some reason. However, this is when things go crazy. Did the officials make a decision that may alter the entire game, or was this just basketball becoming physical? Dialogue, you'll understand why everyone began to raise questions after you see what transpired next.
With me, take a walk with me, take a walk with me. There is craziness going on in the WNBA. DiJonai Carrington tweeted out white privilege from the locker room of a game that she was playing in. Get this, she fouled Sophie Cunningham hard. Sophie Cunningham, obviously white person, fouls her hard. Flagrant 2, gets ejected, goes to the locker room and tweets out white privilege in the middle of the game. Now here's the kicker to me. A flagrant 2 has to be contact that can lead to an injury that looks excessive. DiJonai, it was about as excessive as possible. If there was any evidence of there being white privilege, this was not it. What the hell do y'all think?
Even if the game had already become physical, DiJonai Carrington elevated it to a whole new level. While Sophie Cunningham was navigating the play, Carrington struck her with a blow that caused everyone in the building to react right away.
Walking in for a layup, and so I don't oppose the hard foul, but I also don't think that she intentionally went for the net.
Stephanie White, we shouldn't be surprised. This is somebody who has come out and admitted publicly that she's uneducated on the difference between male and female. She's uneducated on. So are we really surprised that this is Stephanie White's thought process here? I've been saying Stephanie needs to be fired for over a year. The reason she never defends Caitlin is because she agrees with the rough play. In fact, she taught DiJonai and AT how to play this way.
Many people who watched the tape thought it was far more serious than a typical basketball play. The event was particularly startling because of the contact around Cunningham's upper body, and in some way, the hit was just the start, since supporters were anticipating whether Cunningham's own another aspect of the story began to raise eyebrows, and the crew would instantly come together to support her.
Felt that Caitlin put a little extra sauce on the forearm when she ran into that official. Did the league get this right, rescinding the technical foul?
Can we see it again? Team crew in the control room, can I see it again? Because you all watched this in real time.
Yeah.
You all watched this happen in real time. I was surprised that a technical foul was called.
Because for that action being minimal, like a brush, this is what should have happened and the right thing happened. What? What is
all I'm saying is I have flashbacks to college when my teammate bumped into a coach like this and it was a problem.
Where your teammate did what?
Bumped into one of our coaches this way and it was a problem. But I think when we analyze it, if Caitlin didn't say anything, it is marginal. I think rescinding it was fine. But I do understand in the moment how we got here.
Stephanie White didn't exactly make a big show of support by storming onto the court. May have anticipated, abruptly, the topic of discussion changed from what had transpired between the players to the team's response to the subsequent events.
Sophie Cunningham was going to be the next target. I've been telling you guys for weeks. Sophie would take the role of Caitlin Clark as public enemy number 1 in the WNBA dump. And yesterday was the first attack. You know, I wasn't able to predict this because I'm some brilliant scholar or philosopher. This prediction was not delivered to me in a dream or a vision that came from the dearly departed Miss Clea.
However, Carrington's response added to the intrigue of the issue. Rather of appearing like someone who had just committed a blatantly evident foul, Carrington seemed to see things quite differently. Of the whole thing, her subsequent remarks simply fueled the flames because of the manner she talked about the play made. Some people question if she really thought the contact was a typical basketball play. This is the point at which the story becomes intriguing, because if there was already controversy surrounding the collision, it became much more significant following the explanation. Fans were no longer arguing about one foul, they were discussing officiating, accountability, intent, and whether or not specific players are Handled differently when a WNBA game's temperature unexpectedly spikes. Next, if DJ Carrington was kicked out of the match, everything got worse after that. Sophie Cunningham had already struck the floor hard after taking the force of the impact, and she instantly sprang up and approached Carrington before they were separated by Fever security and their teammates. Then Carrington moved in the direction of the tunnel, since the audience's response simply made the situation more intense.
Make this play successfully, right? Trying to get a block over the top. It was a very hard foul. DiJonai has made this play successfully so many times throughout her career. No matter what team she has played on, we have seen DiJonai make transition blocks. Right. So to me, I understand it was called a flagrant 2. I wouldn't have been mad if it was called a flagrant 1 because I do think she was making a basketball play. It was just
However, the night's most explosive event took place outside of the arena. It took place on the internet. A few minutes following the ejection, Carrington tagged the Indiana Fever and used the phrase white privilege. The post is placed in the transcript. The game was still in progress about 8 minutes after the foul. The entire conversation abruptly altered, because a hard foul was no longer the only issue. It has to do with intent, interpretation, and everything related to it. At that point, the matter became more than just a typical basketball debate. Lot larger than a single play. Many of them openly supported Sophie Cunningham, emphasizing that what she went through was not out of the ordinary for a competitive game, but the response and build-up around it seemed excessive. Some backed DJ Carrington, claiming that the game involves physical defense and that emotional responses following rejections are nothing new. However, the NBA Voice's most recurring issue was officiating rather than taking sides. An increasing number of gamers started expressing the same idea in various ways. There is inconsistency in the standard. They noted that, depending on the situation, comparable plays in the NBA frequently result in flagrant or common fouls. However, the meaning appears to vary greatly from game to game in the WNBA. They contended that this inconsistency is what leads to annoyance and, ultimately, public outbursts like this one.
DiJonai Carrington's foul was upgraded to a flagrant 2 on Sophie Cunningham. She was ultimately ejected from the game against the Indiana Fever. Then she takes her to the locker room, and the first thing she does is run to Twitter and say, white privilege. Where's the white privilege in this? I'm watching the game, Sophie Cunningham going on a fast break. And again, DiJonai Carrington, you're not going for the ball. You literally went straight for her cranium. So I don't know why you sitting here screaming white privilege after that. Don't deflect from the malicious, the blatant, and overly aggressive foul that you just created. That again, if the WNBA does not suspend you for multiple games, they're going to protest.
NBA veterans went so far as to claim that guys like Carrington and Cunningham are being placed in unfeasible circumstances when defending oneself physically is praised until it is abruptly penalized. Without giving a precise reason, that opinion swiftly gained traction, particularly among athletes who have seen the WNBA expand in visibility for the previous 2 seasons. The discussion then took a different turn when more recent disputes were put back in the public eye. One of the more startling topics that came up again online was Caitlin Clark's suspension, which fans and pundits pointed to as part of a larger trend of misunderstanding over officiating. In light of the conversation going on in the context of the transcripts, following an alleged incident in which she shoved a referee during a tense moment, Clark was suspended. During a game, there was an instant and conflicting response to such suspension. Critics saw it as a distinct line that ought to, no matter the situation, I've never been crossed, and now that the Carrington-Cunningham event is taking place, those old arguments resurfaced. NBA players who had previously discussed the fairness of officiating started making the connections in public. As a result, every hard foul in the league becomes a referendum on justice, and that is precisely what took place in this instance. Supporters of Sophie Cunningham contend that she was just acting aggressively basketball and became embroiled in an uncontrollably intense moment. Supporters of DJ Carrington argue she was reacting emotionally to a difficult physical environment, and her post was more a reflection of her irritation than to escalate.
The reason I saw this coming is because I have been seeing this same thing in this toxic turd of a league for years. As I am watching the reactions on social media yesterday of DiJonai Carrington assaulting Sophie Cunningham, and that's what this was, assault. This was not incidental contact in the rhythm of a basketball game, mainly because the WNBA is not a basketball league. What you saw yesterday, that was intentional assault. And like I said,
However, the tone was altered once more as NBA voices entered the discussion, due to the fact that athletes that have said, "This doesn't look consistent," after years of dealing with playoff-level roughness. Individuals listen in different ways. Some of them expressly state that the WNBA is going via a phase of change where rising popularity. Every move made by officials has been magnified, particularly in the presence of celebrities like Caitlin Clark. They contend that the spotlight is bringing to light issues that have always existed but were never given as much attention. And that's where the current indignation is coming from. Not only from a single team or fan group, but from an expanding variety of former professionals, players, and analysts. Additionally, Cunningham's participation connects everything because she sits in the middle of the most recent flashpoint. The next chapter is even more crucial because the league must now handle the fallout from a dispute that has already transcended the limits of the court. The authorities' decision was made during the game, but when social media got involved, the WNBA was no longer faced with a straightforward officiating choice. It has to do with competing interpretations of identity, accountability, justice, and intent, all of which can become considerably more difficult to manage once millions of supporters have sided with them.
Indiana Fever games, like, I don't know if I love them or I hate them at times. It's like, if you like anything about reality TV, then the WNBA is, and sports, then the WNBA is for you. Sometimes it gets to be way too much, and this season, I gotta say, I've gotten to that place multiple times. But this game, like, I mean, love it or hate it, you can't say that you could have taken your eyes off of it for any second. The Indiana Fever came in against the Chicago Sky, playing on their home turf. And listen, the Chicago Sky have been a very bad team, but have also taken teams to the wire, like the Minnesota Lynx, nearly beating them very recently.
The league's greatest obstacle is that maintaining consistency requires more than just making the same decision repeatedly. Something goes awry. It entails setting a benchmark that players, coaches, and supporters can comprehend before the following contentious play takes place. If a specific kind of touch is likely to cause an ejection, players must understand why, and the league must be able to describe the distinction without letting everyone fill in the spaces on their own. Additionally, time is important because the WNBA operates in a time when practically all major officiating is more challenging, since a referee is no longer making a choice that is exclusive to an arena. The choice may become the focal point of a national debate prior to even the locker room has been accessed by the players. The league cannot afford to handle disputes because of this, such as these as isolated instances that just vanish when the next game starts. If athletes and supporters think their every choice made in the future will be evaluated in light of this pattern of uneven enforcement, even if a referee makes the right judgment, they may still be criticized because the spectators recall a different call from weeks or years before. It is far more difficult to regain trust in such setting than it is to lose it.
The WNBA, there's a video of Shaq going around talking about the WNBA. He goes,
I have a way to make it equal.
The WNBA, they have all the pieces to have a really good league. They have shooters, they have ball handlers, they have finesse. There's no...
We just lower the rim so y'all can like
we put butts in the seat.
No.
I don't think that's the problem.
That's what Shaq said.
He's thinking basketball. He's not thinking why people want to watch shit.
Yeah.
You're a jiu-jitsu guy, right?
Yeah.
The good thing is women's jiu-jitsu, it's actually popping, but like, let's say it wasn't. From a jiu-jitsu lens, you'd probably be like, oh yeah, if there's fucking more arm breaks, people are going to watch it more.
Additionally, the incident highlights the complex interplay between accountability and competitive intensity. It is expected of players to compete for every possession, challenge shots, defend fiercely, and shield their teammates. However, they must also be able to recognize when physicality has gone too far. There has always been a balance. In basketball, even though the current WNBA receives a lot of attention, every contentious choice is now much more closely examined than it was in the past. Furthermore, this scrutiny isn't always a bad thing, actually. It may compel leagues to improve their consistency and transparency. The issue arises when the discussion becomes totally focused on what people think happened, rather than what actually occurred. After then, narratives may take precedence over facts, and each fresh playback merely becomes another weapon. Above all, the supporters are aware of it. A standard defensive move that typically only gets a few seconds. If it involves the same actors, it can quickly become the next big topic of discussion. This does not imply that players should refrain from competing fiercely, since doing so would defeat the objective of professional basketball. It implies that the league must ensure that the regulations are followed precisely, sufficient to prevent mistrust from overshadowing competition.